Alright people, bass heads, it's your boy, the OG Sodda Pop Kid, coming to you direct with another tutorial down here in my storage unit, garage. Okay, so as you see here, I went back to my original Dodge Diesel Cummins 220s alternators and removed the 320s because I wanted to see how these 220s would do in competition. Like I said, they sat up in my attic since 2018. So the last two competitions in June and July. The last one was out at Speedway Slam out there in Zanesville, Ohio. And I wanted to see how these would do compared to the 320s. And so I noticed this. As you can see on here, I got the real big pulleys on these, and when they're idling, like if I'm at a stop sign or a stoplight, my voltage still stays the same, like a 15.6 where I set it. It doesn't drop when I come to a stop. So with the 220s at idle, they'll still idle, you know, at the regular speed when you come to a stop with these big pulleys on it. Now the 320s had to have much smaller pulleys on them. Okay, so with that being said, you know what I mean? Well, I had the smaller pulleys on them and they did just fine coming to stops and all of that. It's just that with them, you know, out here in Pennsylvania, you know, down around here where I stay, there's no alternator shops that makes alternators 320s and 420s and 500s and 390s. They don't do that. And I know that these Dodge Cummins alternators, they come 220, 240 straight out the factory. And that's pretty good high amperage for an alternator to just come out the factory already done that way. And a while back, the alternator shop that's close to me, called Murray Automotive Electric, well, they was trying to turn me on to these alternators because of that, because they already come at a pretty decent amperage. You know what I mean? And they had told me then that if I was to get a bracket or find somebody that can put these in my car, because at that time, I was using the Ford third generation alternators with V-belts in this car at that time. You know what I mean? They said this will be a good alternator because those guys no longer even try to build no high amp alternators anymore. They can fix your alternators, they can replace the components that's already in them and starters and stuff like that, but they no longer get into high amp alternators anymore. They don't have time, as they say. They just want you in and out. So with that being said, you know, that's how I got turned on to these alternators in the first place. So, but these do good in competition still, even only being 220s. Okay, and back in 2018, when I first got a serpentine belt set up put in this car, I had these in there with 4 VFL 12Ks and 4 American-based Signature Series 18s in this car. And I popped a 161.76 was the highest score I did at that time. Okay, with these alternators, no squeal, no chirping, no none of that. Okay, and it was in May of 2018 when the season first started. And then I felt if I got bigger alternators like the 320s, then my score would go up just by changing alternators. And so I went on and brought 4 CES 320s, spent $1,400 on them. And just to find out that after the fact, my score was never the same. It was like 161.3s and 4s. You know, and then I was getting a lot of chirping and squealing and backlashing, you know what I mean? And that's before I came up with that manual tensioner as well. I had a spring-loaded tensioner. And it wasn't working out, and I basically blamed the 320s for like drawing down my motor, and I felt the 320s shouldn't have been doing that. They should have been able to charge the batteries faster, and that wasn't the outcome. But I kept them, ended up getting a manual tensioner and changing a whole bunch of different belts, this, that, and the other, yada, yada, yada. These 220s, to me, It does just as good, you know what I mean? And they're easy to come by, and I ain't gotta technically send the alternator all the way back to God knows where and pay for it to get done and wait for them to fix it and wait for them to send it back and all of that. These are readily available. All right, so I went back to these. That's the end of that, but that is not what this tutorial is all about. I just felt that I would mention that, you know, to keep you bass heads and people who are just interested in looking at this interested. Now, this is where we're at. Right here. So many tutorials I've done. And this here is basically about talking about box rise and electrical and ohms and stuff like that. So, any of you bass heads, I be wanting y'all to chime in, especially you bass head geniuses out there. Y'all just know it all. There's nothing you don't know about car audio. But this is what this is about. So, I watch a lot of YouTube. About a lot of stuff. Like, YouTube's very educational about a lot of things. So, a lot of the dynos videos I do watch, a lot of them. Sometimes when I find something interesting on YouTube, I'll watch that stuff for about 2 or 3 weeks straight. All while I'm cutting hair, all while I'm upstairs laying down, I'll just jump from video to video. So, that Big D Wiz, that face kicker guy, Jones Subwoofer Solutions, and that Budget Jim Budget Bus guy, I watch all of them. I'm subscribed to them. Okay, and I watch their dynos when they're dynoing it certified, uncertified, and dynamic power. So this is where we're going with this. Okay, so I need feedback as well. And watching those tutorials, you know what I mean, with these different amplifiers. And I've noticed this. A lot of those budget amplifiers do work on that dyno. So, you know, I don't know why cats are still bashing, because that, like I said, cardio bashing should be played out by now. Because you got these cheap amps out there doing power, like, for example, that Amazon brand called Harmony. Okay? They dyno one of those amplifiers, and they run like $249 on Amazon, and that amplifier did work. It did pretty good numbers on that dyno. And what I'm feeling about them dyno tests is real world testing is when you get these amplifiers in your car and you got alternators running them and your different amp hours of lithium battery banks, or if you're still out there using AGMs or acid batteries or any other lithium, you know what I mean? And box rise has a lot to do with how much power the amplifiers is really going to put out. It seems as though on them dynos, they're just using battery banks. That's it. There's no box rise involved or any of that. So one of them guys were actually testing an amplifier that I kind of was interested in. Now, it's a clone, a Chinese clone of a Brazilian amplifier, and the guts of it looks like the Sound Digital. It's a Sound Digital guts of this clone Chinese amplifier. And I've used Chinese boards before. Trust me, I'm about to go through all of that. And I've always ran those amps at a half ohm, a 0.6, probably a 0.6 technically, and never had problems with any of them. You see what I mean? Never. And running them on acid batteries or AGM batteries before I moved to a lithium. You know what I mean? And usually my box rise was like 1.2 to 1.4 ohm box rise. Now let me go into that when I started running them, because at one point I never would run my amplifiers under 1 ohm when I was running an SPL FX1 5500D that was made by Power Acoustic. Back when I was running Power Acoustic mofos, I ran those amplifiers back when I was dealing with Power Acoustic, when a couple of the guys, Gene Norvell worked there and Big Grizz worked there, and I approached Gene Norvell at Spring Break Nationals in 2006 down in Daytona Beach, Florida. And ever since then, they was like hooking me up with deals because I was a competitor. I was getting those amplifiers only $150 and $45 or something like that back then. You know what I mean? And getting the subs for a real good price too, and I was getting them straight from California. Okay? So, those amplifiers, I was running them at like 1 ohm and probably getting about 15 to 1600 watts out of each one of them. And now this is before I started running 1 amp per sub. I moved on to that using power acoustic. All right? And I was using just 2 amps and 4 12s. You know what I mean? And running them at 1 ohm. And then I was on a team called Team Livewire out of Ohio, Columbus, Ohio back then. And Eric Alexander, Gene Alexander, and all them guys, you know, before I was on a team. I wasn't on a team. I was rolling solo to Tennessee, Kentucky, Indianapolis, and all of that, all by myself competing. And still was learning at the time. So we're talking about 6, 7, 8 back then. I joined Livewire in 07. Okay, so I went back there. I was going to these contests and I met these guys, got cool with them, and started asking for advice because I was watching and learning. When I met Vernon Sargent and Team Neo and all them guys was running American bass, and I was just drooling to run American bass. And I was seeing Bob out there but didn't know him and stuff like that. And I started asking Vernon and them for advice on certain stuff. And so Gene and them pretty much was telling me, and Eric and them was like, man, why don't you run half ohm and you'll get more power out of your amp if you run half ohm. But then somewhere along the lines I was hearing, well, if we run a half ohm, that'll make the amps get hotter, yada, yada, yada. And I was kind of scared to run a half ohm. But they kept at me every time I saw them. They was like, I'm telling you. I was like, yeah, but what if the amp burn up? They was like, they're not. And they started mentioning box rise, which I didn't understand box rise at the time or what it meant. But I remember what was told to me. Like, I remember dreams that I had when I was like 5 years old. I remember Eric Alexander saying, yo, man, well, if you run at a half ohm, your box rise is going to be like 1 ohm something, and the amps will never really see a half ohm if the box rise is saying something else. I remember them telling me that. All right, well, long story short, I ended up running the amps at a half ohm, and I ended up getting 1,875 watts at a half ohm, you know, running acid batteries, like lead acid batteries, 4 lead acid batteries behind my seat, 2 on each side. You know what I mean? I got my first 150 with 4 Mofo 12s and only 2 SPL amplifiers, people. I got my first 150. You know what I mean? And that was because I was charging my batteries. Now, guys like Joseph Alt Sr. and them was telling me about charging the batteries up all day or all overnight and then driving way out to the contest and not playing the system at all to keep the batteries charged. I started learning that from Joe Alt Sr. and them guys. Okay? So, and when I started doing that, I did that for the first time before Worlds in 2010. And that's when I got my first 150 at Mecca World Finals. But before I was even running Mecca, I was doing DB drag like no other. Traveling all over Ohio and everything, doing DB drag. Or anything that I can do before I even learned about Mecca. Alright, so. This box rise thing, from then on in, I just ran all my amps at a half ohm then because I seen that you get more power and then it was louder. It was a noticeable difference. You know what I mean? And I wasn't afraid to run my amps at half ohm anymore. So I'm talking about, I ran a 25 of the Shark 2500s. I ran 8 at first. That's when I first ran them amps strapped at 1 ohm. Half ohm nominal, and my box rise was 1.1 ohm box rise. Okay? Then I ended up running 16 of them, strapped at 1 ohm. I ran 16 audio pipe mini 2Ks, strapped at 1 ohm. I ran 8 of the APC audio pipe APCL 1800s. I ran 4 of the 2500s. I forget what those were called, but I didn't run them at a half ohm. I ran them at 1 ohm. Okay. I ran the VFL mini hybrid 4800s at 1 ohm strap. They're small. They were mini amps as well. You know what I mean? I ran the VFL 12Ks at a half ohm and the 8Ks at a half ohm. And never had an issue. Now there was little issues, manufacturer's issues with the amps, like them smoking on me before the radio can power up and stuff like that. That was manufacturer's defects. As stuff like that happened, or if I accidentally put the positive in the negative and the negative in the positive, I burned them up not paying attention. But never burned them up running them half ohm. Now, out of all these years, there may be 1 amp, that might have, went, and that's it. And I just exchanged it out. So, those guys doing these dynos, I would assume those dynos are more stressful on the amps than real world running them in your car. I would, because they're just running them on a battery bank and doing certified, uncertified, dynamic, 4 ohms, 2 ohms, 1 ohms, and sometimes they do go to 0.8 or half an ohm depending on the amplifier. And then a lot of the times they're like, no, we're not going to run it below 1 ohm, but I think when they're running dynamic and uncertified, I be seeing that clip light flashing like a mug, man. Which means they're clipping the amplifiers. But I'm going to explain something to you. These MD TerraAmp MD8Ks that I'm running here, I've been running these things almost 2 years at 0.6 of an ohm according to my Fluke sitting there. And Fluke is true. That's a true multimeter that reads true voltage. All the rest of them might read like 0.8 or 0.7. That thing reads what it really supposed to read. That's why I like those, but they're expensive. Okay, so I haven't had it. Now I just got an amplifier. I just posted it up today that I got an amplifier fixed by Kevin Maskey. That's the first time I've ever seen an amplifier way to ever get repaired ever. Because usually I keep backups, and I did have a backup because I got 9 of these. And that amp right there, amp number 2, I got them all numbered, and I got all my subs numbered so I know which amp is going to which sub. Yada, yada, yada. So if something goes wrong, I know which sub is messing up and amp. That's amp number 2. That amp was brand ass new. It's only like 2 months old technically out of the box. That replaced the one that Kevin Maskey just fixed. So now that one that Kevin Maskey fixed is a backup now. All right, he replaced both fans and both outputs as he told me. Okay, but the subs still remain good. Okay. One of these other amps was going into protection in the last 2 competitions. You know what I mean? So what I did was I swapped the wires, the sub wires from one amp to the other amp to the other amp to see if it was the sub or the amp. When I did that, then that amp started going into protect, and I knew it was the sub. So I had an extra sub as well, a brand new sub. I swapped out the sub, boom, that's over. So that probably was holding my score back a little bit as well. Okay, because whenever I did my parking pound, then it would go into protect. Okay, so that's that. Never had an issue with these amplifiers ran at 0.6. They never overheated in this hot ass trunk at 90 degrees and all that we've been having. Okay, I never had no issues with any of the amps running them at 0.6. So this is the thing. The one company I was telling you about, that company, I'm not going to tell you the name of them just yet until after I prove them. I even like their subs as well. They got 4-inch voice coils on their subs, and I am a fan of 4-inch voice coils, period. All right, so, hit the owner up, and they're in Pennsylvania as well, just further out in PA. I hit him up, and I've been wanting to holler at him about his amps, and a friend requested him on, and he asked me, he's like, well, what ohm are you running? And I'm like, well, 0.6. Let me ask y'all something, all you companies, man, even you bases with these companies, because some cats run their amplifiers into the dirt. I'm talking about 1/4 ohm, 0.35, and they may tell you companies, I'm only running at 1 ohm when something happens to it. Me, I'm honest. I get persecuted for being honest. I'm just honest. I'll tell the truth, like I'm running at 0.6. And then all of a sudden, man, I won't warranty him. I ain't gonna warranty him. Why do y'all act like I'm standing on the top of the Empire State Building with a bunch of puppies in my arms, about to throw them off the Empire State Building right in front of you. Hey, look, I'm about to throw these puppies off the Empire State Building right now, way down into the streets and that, and watch them splatter. Oh my God, no, don't do that. Why would you ever do that? Please, no. That's what y'all sound like about running y'all amplifiers at 0.6. Now, if I was running Chinese boards, SPL amplifiers and Sharks and audio pipe minis and all them at a 0.5 and all that, and nothing ever happened to them, why would y'all super modern day amplifiers blow up at 0.6, especially when I'm running 190 amp hour bank, 4 alternators as I just showed you, and my boss rise is like 1.4 ohm right now. And I compete. I drive all over the place competing with 737 trophies, plaques, medals, and certificates to date. Wouldn't you think I know what I'm doing? And I've been running these amps like that too. And I wanted to run them, and he's like, oh man, no warranty. Fine. That's why I buy backups. And I'll simply do what I did. Send it to Kevin Mansky and let him fix it. You know what I mean? Or why wouldn't I get a warranty? Because after everything's over, said and done, everything I've ever owned, I sold them all. I ran them at a half ohm and then sold them to the next person who ran them however they ran them, and the amps lasted, and so did the subs. So why do y'all hit the panic button like that, man? You know, whenever I want to try something, I'm pretty much going to put your stuff, I'm pretty much going to put your stuff out there. Like, put your stuff, you know what I mean? Use your stuff as a good example by me out here doing 162s and 61.9s and all of that. And to see if I can do that same thing with your amplifiers. If I did it with Shark, now not Shark. It could have been with Shark or Audio Pipe, because I was doing 159.9s with those. And all it was a matter of changing my frequency to get a 160. And Joe Alt Sr. was trying to get me to do that too when I was doing 159.9s. All I needed to do was go up one frequency and I would have got a 60. But I was content with my scores. But when I finally did it, a 160.2, I did it with, so I got one of these amps on 8 of the HD, American-based HD V2 blue baskets. Okay, one on each. Actually, these are more power than what those can stand, but I have shot 8,000 through them. I am getting 8,042 watts from each one of these at volume 30 off my Kenwood head unit with no clip whatsoever at 105.5 AC volts. These amps do not clip until 106 and some change. I got them at 105.5 clean. I do not believe in soft clip, partially clip, clipping it burp, none of that. I don't believe in any of that. I believe in my amps being clean power. I'm getting AK clean if I burp at volume 30, but technically I have did that a couple times in those subs, running way more power in them than I should to see what they would do or if they would last, and that's when I did 62s, which means those speakers can do no more unless I start doing tricks with my cabin and shrinking the box itself, because I got them all in like 2.1 cubic foot each after displacement. So I'm told, well, if you bring that down to 1.8 and that minute, the speakers will handle more power, which they will. I know they will, because I ran 18s. I ran my Signature Series 18s. After it was all said and done, they were in 4.8 cubic foot after displacement. And they still hit nice. They still sounded good. They still, you know what I mean? So, with that being said, I did my first 160 with 8 of the older HDs on 16 VFL Mini Hybrid 4800s strapped at 1 ohm. I did my first 160 with those little mini Chinese amps and all of that. Ran at a half ohm nominal. I did my first 160. I could have did a 160 with 415s when I had them. I was 159.9s. That's less cone area. And I can do that now. Like, I thought about going back to 415s, 4 powerful 15s. But granted, I didn't have this much power in the car. Neither did I have a C-Max. I had AGMs, like 12 AGMs in the trunk. And V-belts with 4 third-generation alternators as well. I didn't have no serpentine belt set up and them Dodge alternators in here when I popped my first 160. I had a V-belt set up. 4 alternators on their own V-belts with a special made bracket from PJ Moore out there in Ashtabula, Ohio. See where I'm going right now? While Cass was criticizing me about my electrical, you know, but still I did a 160, over a 60. You get it? So, with that being said, that's what I wanted to, you know, give me some feedback if them dynos put more stress on amplifiers than real world testing inside of a car with alternators maintaining the battery at the same time and all of that, and box rise. Because I did go and ask one of them dudes, and I'm not going to put him on blast. I should. When I'm subscribed to you and I'm watching your channel. And a lot of you dudes, I just started watching Big D-Wiz and all of them. And some of that stuff they got is like 2-3 years old. Well, everybody hasn't been watching y'all. I hope y'all see this on YouTube because I'm putting it on there. Everybody hasn't been watching y'all for all those years. It's people just finding out about y'all, the newcomers in the bass world. Okay? And I asked him a question about why I wanted to know what those amplifiers that I was talking about would do at a half ohm, and he answered me immediately. He was like, because the amp would burn up and all. So I asked him for his professional opinion. I was like, all right, so with box rise and all that, I should be able to run them at 0.6 since I ran Shark and I went through all these amps on there at 0.6. Those should be able to handle it too, right? And he never answered back, which tells me his knowledge is only with that dyno. That he hasn't put nothing to the test. Just with that dyno, he can answer that. That's it. He never answered back. And I felt some type of way. Well, dude, I'm subscribed to you and watching you. You should know your stuff if you know everything about this dyno stuff. You know what I mean? But I did real world testing. And I got a DD1 and a CC1 too as well. But I tried to run them on these amps and they don't read. They read totally different. They clip way faster than the clip lights do on these amps. So I know that they don't agree with the Brazilian amplifiers. So I got them in case I ever do get, go back to a Korean or even buy Chinese anything, because I'm really not for the bashing, and I don't really pick and choose. I like whatever works. And if the price is right as well. And those amps I'm talking about, the price is fairly nice for dual. They got dual power inputs on them. They got Tiffany style RCAs and all of that. You know what I mean? I was digging the inside of them. You know what I mean? I seen a clamp for sound. I seen a sound digital. I seen a Stetson clamp. But a sound digital, I've seen that Bear Vids guy out there in Europe who fixes amps show the guts of a sound digital, and that amplifier looks just like a sound digital. It does not have the inserts of a Terra amp. Okay, because I know what the insides of these look like now that Kevin Mansky fixed it. He sent me a picture of it before he sent it back with the guts off. Okay. But I was curious about those amps, and I still got yet waiting for the owner to call me. So if he sees this video, he ought to know who he is and call me so we can chop it up, so I can just tell him I may be interested in running his amplifiers, and I might want to buy 8 of them. You know what I mean? And see what they can do and put him on a map maybe. And if, for various reasons, and I did mention that these may go up for sale after the season. Could be before the season, and I get those and start running them before the season's out, but not at this very moment. And I'll have 9 of them. And I did post up, and I just have the guys message me to tell them the price is like a giveaway. It's a love shot, a damn love shot. Nothing's wrong with them. You know what I mean? Nothing's wrong with them. And I'm doing some cabin stuff with my car now, to try to see if my score can go up without continually trying to buy equipment, because all the equipment that I brought since I've hit the 160s, since I've hit the 61s, everything is pretty much, and I can just say it's the cabin. When I had more cone area and more this and more that, it always was like 61 something, consistent 61s. I did 62, 62.03, 62.3, but it's not consistent. You know what I mean? And no matter what, and this is 64,000 watts right here in steel. Now, if I change subwoofers, if I go to a stronger sub, my score will go up because I've watched it happen with the American-based comp yellows and the signature. I watched my scores jump when I went to the 18s immediately with 4-inch voice coils. I watched them just jump. The scores just jump like a whole half dB, a whole dB. You know what I mean? So if I go to like the X-Max Monsters or the Godfathers or the Signatures or the new American-based Kings, the score will go. Them subs can handle more, move further, all kinds of stuff. So just by switching subs to be able to handle this kind of power, yeah, my score will jump up. All right, I just needed to get that out there. I'm going to post this up. My tutorials is always a little long. I got a new sticker on my new windshield. It says the same thing, just a different font. Okay, yada, yada, yada. But I got some plans. This alternator sold, this 1320. I got 3 left. All right, people, I wanted to get this out because I got off of work early and I didn't mean to go this long. All right, so Sodda Pop Kid, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. Peace.